So, late at night, I usually go to the bathroom multiple times, but for the past 4 days, every time I go to leave, I can see myself still standing in the mirror from the corner of my eye. It is like the other me is watching me leave from the bathroom, and it terrifies me to the point where I almost run out without even looking directly at the mirror. I never told my husband about this because I didn't want to acknowledge it out loud. Earlier today, I took a nap in our bed while he sat in the chair next to me watching TV. When I woke up, he told me that he had seen me sit up and crawl backwards to the edge of the bed and to stand up in front of our bedroom door from the corner of his eye. He thought it was weird that I got up like that because I'm in my last month of pregnancy and I can't really move so good without it hurting, so he tried talking to me. When I didn't answer, he looked at the door to find me not there, but still sleeping in my bed. I got really creeped out by this, and I finally told him what was happening in the bathroom. He thought it was creepy as well, but didn't really want to talk about it anymore because it could introduce some bad energy. I have no idea what this thing wants or why the both of us have even seen it. When I was about 15 years old, I traveled to Europe with my family. We stayed in Edel, Germany in a small inn for a few nights. My parents had a double bedroom on the second floor, while my sisters had a double bedroom next to theirs, and I was lucky enough to have my own single room all to myself at the far end of the hall. As soon as I entered the hallway that led to all of our rooms, I remember feeling as though I just walked into a wall of bad energy. I just felt so unnerved and uneasy in that hallway, but I passed it off as an overactive imagination. I slept the first night without any real issues other than waking up a few times. The next morning at breakfast, one of my sisters mentioned feeling really uncomfortable in that hallway, almost as if the air was crushing her. It unnerved me even more that I wasn't the only one who felt weirded out by this. Plus, she was an adult at that time, so it further cemented in my head that that wing of the hotel was odd. Later that night, I'm sleeping peacefully when, at around 2 a.m., I'm violently woken up by something ripping the covers off of me and being jerked about 2 feet towards the end of the bed by my ankles. At first, I thought someone had broken into my room because when I turned towards what had grabbed me, it was a huge, looming black shape was visible in the darkness, like a man was in my room. I frantically flipped the light on, only to have there be nothing there. The window was locked from the inside, there was no one in the closet or the bathroom, and my room was also still locked from the inside. I stayed up the rest of the night, pretty scared, playing Cooking Mama on my DS. The next morning, we're all at breakfast when my sister mentions that she was up for half the night because she thought she saw a person's silhouette against the wall of the room. But when she turned on the light, there was nothing there. It was just a bizarre and very creepy experience. We checked out that same day, actually, so I didn't get to experience anything after that, but it still freaks me out to this day. So, this one night, when I was maybe 10 or 12 years old, I had trouble falling asleep. My bedroom was the entire top floor of our house, with my bed and such being on the left side and the storage closet and the play area on the right. I was lying in bed when I heard a noise from the other side of the room and saw a rocking horse begin to rock. It was sitting just outside one of the storage closet doors. It proceeded to rock its way halfway across the room and stopped dead under the ceiling light. At this point, I was freaking out and just buried my head under my blankets and never peeked out again until it was morning. When I woke up, the rocking horse was still in the middle of my room. Furthermore, I get a strong reprimand from my parents for being up out of bed playing with my toy well past my bedtime. Their bedroom was directly below the storage closet slash play area and had heard creaking and shuffling across the room all night. When I was a teenager, I used to babysit my cousin Alyssa. She was little, maybe about 2 years old, maybe a little older, I can't remember, but nevertheless old enough to form sentences. I'm giving her a bath before bed when she looks out into the hallway and gets this terrified look on her face and begins to cry. Also at this moment, my aunt's Pomeranian starts going nuts as well, barking and snarling into the hallway. The atmosphere in the room as well becomes very uncomfortable, and I start to get really scared. I took her downstairs from the third floor in the townhouse that she lived in to try and calm her down. I asked her what was wrong, but all she could muster was, the man with the black eyes was staring at me. When I continued to pry her, she just looked up at the second floor stairs, her eyes getting big and wide, and looks at me, bringing her finger to her mouth, and says the most cliche shh while shaking her head no. She didn't want to tell me. Yeah, that was pretty freaky. I lived in this house with this basement, and every time I walked up the stairs, I would get this weird, creepy goosebumps feeling on the back of my neck. It didn't make me uneasy to go down the stairs or to be in the basement at all. My craft room was down there, and I ended up spending a lot of time there. After a while, I would have items I was using disappear when I would look away from them. I would search, and one day I got frustrated, and to no one in particular, I said, "Arg, can I please have my scissors back?" I had just looked under the pile of new mail, and when I turned my head, there was my scissors on top of the pile of mail. I talked to my neighbor, and she had told me that the original owner of the house was this jolly old man who loved to play pranks on people, but sadly had fallen coming up the stairs one day and died. I think the goosebumps were him trying to tell me to be careful, and every time after that, when something would disappear, I would politely ask for it back, and it would appear in the place that I could not have missed it before. Thanks, old man. It was fun, and I'm glad you're not an evil spirit. One day, when my daughter was 2 years old, we were having a typical terrible twos moment. She was throwing a bit of a tantrum for about 5 to 10 minutes, and we couldn't get her under control. At some point, she, rather suddenly, stopped and started staring at the wall. She then started lightly giggling. Safe to say it was pretty weird. One second she is crying and screaming, and the next she is smiling and happy. Then she starts saying, "Funny lady," over and over. We asked her who she saw, and she pointed to the wall and again said, "The funny lady." When we asked her to describe who she saw, she described my deceased grandmother. I mean, exactly described her. She had never met her, and I don't think I had ever seen a picture of her. Not that a 2-year-old could possibly remember a picture. I'm not much of a believer in the paranormal, but I know for sure that my daughter got a chance to meet my mom, and that makes me happy. When I told the story to my parents, they didn't seem as shocked as I was. When I tried to get a response from them, they looked at me and said, "Well, I guess you don't remember that you met your deceased grandfather when you were 3. The same thing happened to you about 30 years ago." So, I didn't grow up believing in ghosts. That all changed, of course, when one morning when I was 16 years old, my friend's mom picked me up for carpool. I mentioned that I was really creeped out by this one bathroom under the stairs in my house that no one would ever use. I couldn't exactly define why I felt this way, I just found it eerie. The house I grew up in was an old-fashioned Victorian home built in the 1800s, so eerie vibes were definitely part of the package. Hearing this reminded my friend of her own creepy bathroom association. She told me that when she lived in the German countryside for a year, there was a little section of the house that no one but her middle sister would ever use, who was about 9 years old at that time. During this time period, her sister would wake up with bloodshot eyes, sometimes even bruises, and feel totally and utterly exhausted. They did everything to investigate what was going on, including and especially sleeping in a room, working with a child psychologist, and a school counselor. My friend doesn't really remember much from this time period, other than her sister was being disturbed by something the year that they lived there. She mentioned that she and her other sister, the oldest, also hated using that bathroom because they would always feel off and find thick black hair stuck in the drain, even though each of them were fine blondes. At this point in the story, my friend's mom abruptly stopped the car and jerked her head around and said, "That's where the woman, who once lived there, killed herself. She drowned herself in the bathtub." Her mother was clearly shaken. She said part of the reason they moved was because something felt off in that house, and they weren't going to stick around to figure out what it was. Hey guys, it's Gotay here. I want to thank you all very much for listening to this episode, and if any of you have any ghost stories of your own, please feel free to send them to me via my personal email linked in the description below. So, thank you again, have a great day, and I will see you mates in the next episode.